It was a great game. And I'm leaving here to welcome the team back at Chrysler. I am going over there, if anybody wants to go. I want to welcome everybody. I'm going to give very brief comments. First, I got to thank Ann Vogel and the entire EPA team who are here. And Mellisa, the EPA administrator who was in my class in the Congress, who took my call when I called him, and I just used facts. And you know, I'm sitting here looking at all of you. Some of you have a longer history than I do, though I've had a long history on this plume. And I remember when people told me, don't go near it, it's too big a pain, nobody will do anything. EPA over the years would come in and talk about things. EGLE, Phil has been a wonderful, Ann and Phil have been incredible partners these last years. And I remember some of you even in this room saying, if a Republican gets in the White House, they'll scratch it all. Well, I want to make this point to you. It was a Republican that designated this and put this on the national priority list. And that is about facts. And it took a lot of work. Everybody in this room has been part of working it. I think of the 2 or 3 years in which we had joint meetings between all of the entities and had open meetings and did all of the discussions and the experts and doing the 4 different meetings, all abiding by the rules of their own councils, and the governor agreeing that we should ask for it to be on the national priority list, and all of the court cases, which I was never a party to, and not understanding everything that was going on. But we are here today because a lot of hard work by a lot of people who care about their communities and are worried about a plume spreading towards drinking water, not endangering community members here. And that's why we're here, because of the hard work of everybody in this room. It's everybody. And Ann's going to make a presentation about where we are, and for some of you who've been around longer than many of us, it's going to take time. You all need to remember that. So I'm asking you to try to remember patience is a virtue. And you all said we'd never get here, and we did. And let EPA do the work that has to, and EGLE, Phil's going to talk in a second here before we turn it over to Ann. Let them do what they've got to do to get this cleaned up right, so that we protect the people that we all represent and care about. I'm going to turn this over to, we were trying to figure out, we're not going to go around and have everybody introduce themselves in the room, but we were talking about who is in the room, all of the state legislatures. Raise your hand, the state legislators. They're right up front. I don't know if you're going to introduce your team or not. EPA is in the room. EPA, raise your hand. Thank you, EPA. EGLE's in the room. Thank you, EGLE. Raise your hand. Then we have the county commissioners. Yay, county commissioners. Saric Township, Ann Arbor Township. They're elected officials from there who worked with everybody, the drain commissioner in the back, and all of the different CARD, LCB, the environmental groups, the Pure and Water. I'm doing exactly what I said I wasn't going to do. So with that, we all, of the city, the mayor. I was looking right at the mayor and think I had said it. Ann Arbor. So it's all 4 communities are here and represented. And with that, I'm good. Thank you, Katie. I'm going to turn this over to you.
All right, thanks. I am so happy you did the introductory.
I didn't do it well.
It's flawless. Hey everybody, good to see a lot of friendly faces out there. For those who don't know me, I'm Phil Roos, Director of EGLE. We're here today to start a whole new chapter in the Gelman story. And how about that? a planning process that EPA will be leading, and it's all possible because of the milestone that happened 3 weeks or so ago, the announcement that EPA was going to list the site on the NPL, National Priorities List. I know the site has been around, I think it was here when I was in college at U of M, and there's been a lot of community members and Team EGLE, a lot of amazing work, initially just trying to figure out what was going on and ultimately leading to the consent agreements and all the revisions. But I think everybody, I won't speak for everybody in the room, but I think most of us would say we were coming to a similar conclusion, is that an important next step was really to list this as a Superfund site. The governor was behind that, EGLE, all the community members, I think all the local and state officials that I know of. And the reason is that the federal Superfund program brings some new tools and resources for assessing a site of this size and complexity. And we're just really thankful that this very first day of this next chapter, which will be a long chapter, is here. And I also want to thank Administrator Vogel. She's been such a great partner on so many issues, and we've worked through a lot in the last year and a half, and I appreciate you so much, and Administrator Zeldin, and all of Team EPA. I want to thank our team for their steadfast work. It's frustrating work. You may not get a lot of love all the time, but I appreciate you, and I know the community appreciates what you all have been doing over the last few years. And Congresswoman Dingell, Debbie, if I may. Hardest working public servant I know, and I think everybody would vouch for me on that. Such a friend and so key to moving this forward at this stage and all through the last X number of years. And I just thank everybody else in the room, because I think we've all played, I won't say me, but you all have played an important role in this, whether environmental advocacy community or local or state government, county government, the CART group. Just appreciate you all. And without, take one of the groups of people introduced out of the equation here, this doesn't happen. So thank you. Debbie already said this, and you'll hear it probably many times. This isn't going to be a quick snap our fingers and we're going to have all this immediate progress. I think we have to recognize that. I wanted to just say something about EGLE and its role, and I don't understand it fully until the plan is in place, but I will say a couple things. Our team will continue our work in implementing the consent judgment until there is the EPA fully takes over the site and works out another agreement with Gelman and begins to really implement the plan. And even after that, we will remain engaged with the community. We will be right there backing up EGLE, lend our expertise, our help in any way that's needed. And so we're not going away anywhere, just know that. Our team has been engaged in this site for 34 years or something like that, since the original consent agreement and then all of the follow-up revisions to that agreement, most recently in 2023. And I know that progress has felt slow in that, but there's actually been a lot that's happened. A lot of understanding of the plume and how it's behaving, a lot of sampling and monitoring wells and solutions, many of which we couldn't undertake as a state because of our own state rules and other constraints. And importantly, we have drinking water in the city of Ann Arbor that is well within safe standards, and we are monitoring the drinking water source of Barton Pond for 1,4-dioxin and other contaminants that could expand through the plume. And I think that's important. It may not feel like, wow, stand up and shout, that's a big victory, but that's a long time of keeping this thing as contained as we possibly could. And now that it's on the NPL list, that enables federal funding, technical experts, enhanced enforcement, a bunch of other things. We're hopeful that it'll open up new opportunities, both in understanding the plume and how to mitigate it. We don't know what those will be, or how robust they'll be, or what will be feasible, and we support EPA's efforts in trying to figure that out, and not expecting a miraculous solution or a lot of things to happen fast, but it will happen. And we're eager to continue working closely with EPA and all of you. And I think I'll just close by saying, once again, that all the people Debbie and I thanked and who were introduced here and who I said were central to getting us to where we are here, that doesn't change. We all are part of making this a successful next chapter. So let's keep providing ground level intelligence and insights and concerns, and EPA, EGLE will play our role in providing whatever guidance and help we can going forward. And with that, I'll thank Administrator Vogel again and turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you very much, Congresswoman. Thank you particularly for hosting this. Your staff did a great job. Thank you for putting all of this together for us today. I am Ann Vogel. I am the Regional Administrator for EPA Region 5, just headquartered in Chicago. That includes, obviously, the great state of Michigan. And OH, no? Okay, I went to Ohio State, but you let me in anyway. Said nice things about me. Congratulations, Michigan.
We did win.
You weren't even in it.
It's okay.
This is an exciting day. This is a very big deal. I've been in this role for a year. It's a real privilege to be here representing the team, representing Team EPA, representing Administrator Zeldin. It's been an exciting year. I've learned a lot. I've learned a whole lot about what it takes to get a site listed, I can tell you that. And it's important to say that it took the year that it did to get here today, many years for you all, but for us, because it's something that the agency takes very seriously. And so it's to your credit, each of you here, that you came with one voice and there's alignment. That's not normal, to say the least, around what needed to happen next for this. And so that meant a lot to the decision makers up the chain too. When it comes to listing something, it's not something the agency does lightly. Let's just put it that way. And so we know that this is a serious endeavor. The team is excited to get to work. I am pleased to be here today, really just to introduce you to the team that is ready to get to work. They have been working alongside EGLE now for several months, if not longer, to figure out what we do know, what we don't know, what can be done, what can't be done, what can be done quickly. I'm not much of a sit around and wait for things to happen kind of person either, so I'm eager to figure out, the point of being here today is to learn from you all, like what do we already know? And of course, EGLE has a lot of data, CARD has a lot of data, so we're excited to come alongside the efforts that have already been underway. EGLE, of course, has been on top of this, protecting drinking water for many years in this site. And so our job is to come alongside and figure out how we can protect the river, protect the community for the long term. And so I appreciate your vision and your passion in bringing this forward. I want to introduce our team. I thought it would be helpful today. I don't want to insult anyone's intelligence. You all know this process, and you all know what's happening. But I thought as our first meeting, it might be helpful to level set. What is the Superfund program? What does it look like? How does it work? So again, not trying to insult anyone's intelligence, but just to set the groundwork for how this happens and how this works and what to expect next. So we have the whole team here, the technical folks and the community involvement people, which is a really important piece of this work. So I want to introduce them and then turn it over to them for a quick presentation. We do have a Q&A scheduled, but I want to say, echoing what Mrs. Dingell and Phil said, we can't answer all your questions today. And we can't necessarily even tell you what happens next. We are coming to this, coming alongside EGLE. We're eager to learn and learn what you all already know, and then we will take it from there. Okay, with that, Mike Harris, you want to stand up? Mike is our division director, Superfund division. Mike, phenomenal asset to the unified team. Mike has experience in the remedial program, and so he knows his stuff in addition to being a great leader. Jim, Saric, you want to take it away? Introduce yourself and the team.
Thank you, Ann. I'm Jim Saric. I work in Chicago, EPA Chicago. I'm a remedial project manager. Been with EPA for 35 years. I'm a hydrogeologist by trade, so I have quite a lot of experience dealing with monitoring groundwater, investigating plumes, groundwater modeling, and implementing pump and treat systems at EPA for years. Although the last 15 years or so I've been working in Michigan, not that far from here is the Kalamazoo, Michigan, the Kalamazoo River, and I'm in charge of the Kalamazoo River cleanup, which is a big cleanup, $1 billion cleanup across 80 miles of the Kalamazoo River, so I work on that as well. So from here I'll turn it over to Mellisa, who works in our emergency response program.
Hi everyone, my name is Mellisa Powers-Taylor. I'm a on-scene coordinator in our removal program, and we work closely with the remedial program, both in the Superfund division. I actually work out of Ann Arbor on the north side at our EPA National Vehicle Fuel Emissions Lab. We have a small group of folks from Region 5 that sit in that office. So I've been with EPA for about 3 years. Before working for EPA, I worked for EGLE for about 5, and then I was worked as a hydrogeologist prior to that. So also very strong technically in hydrogeology. So my role in the project, I'll be working really close with the remedial project manager and helping to assist with needs on the project as they come up. And I'll turn over to Diane.
Hi everyone, Diane Russell, EPA Community Involvement. I've been with the agency for 16 years. I work out of our Flint field office. I'm a Michigan native, so I went to Western Michigan University and I have a degree in geophysics and environmental science. But I've put my skills to work under the community engagement envelope, and I've worked on some high profile sites in Michigan, including the Flint water response. I work on the Tittabawassee, and I also work on Kalamazoo with Jim here. And I am looking very much forward to working in this community on this project.
Can I take it from here? So we put together a few slides and talk about some of the steps. What have we done? I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of both the remedial process, and Melissa's going to talk about the removal process, and this whole kind of a quick Superfund 101 for everybody. And then after that, we're going to talk about like what's next, and then we can go through some questions. So on March 13th, as I'm sure everybody in this room knows, that's when we listed the Gelman site on the national priorities list, which kind of formally kicked everything off. And so what do we do the next week? We reached out to our state partners at EGLE, and the first step really is having a meeting with them, introducing the various technical teams, the legal teams, trying to figure out what are the next steps. What does EGLE want to get out of this? I know we've been in contact with them while we were working on the listing and moving forward with that, but really it was let's kind of work how we're going to work closely and keep coordinating with that, and we are. And just as Phil said, throughout this entire process moving forward, we are going to be working with the state as our partner, kind of and relying on their technical expertise, a lot of their historical knowledge to kind of move together in tandem on this project. On the 27th of March, we kind of initiated our negotiations with Gelman. We kind of started our enforcement process, if you will, from here. And what that meant was we sent out what is called an information request and a general notice law. So what that does is it notifies Gelman of their liability, right? That you're on the hook, we want you to take care of this problem. It also had several questions in this information request that was out there, a lot of them technical questions for gathering information about monitoring wells, about other information, how they're operating the treatment system. So there's a lot of technical information they have to respond to. We inquired about their legal interest in signing up to an agreement as the first phase to kind of get back to us with that. And then also we requested a lot of information on their corporate structure, how they're all set up and who's who within that company. So that's the first step in the kind of enforcement process that went on, and they have like a 30-day window to respond to all that, so that just started. I want to make it clear, just like Phil also mentioned, that people have a lot of questions about how does the consent judgment going to work with EPA's involvement. So we see these things working in parallel, where the state is going to continue to keep the consent judgment in place, enforce the consent judgment that's there. I think there's a lot of really important elements of that. While we go through our process to get forward, I mean, ultimately, I think when EPA gets to the point where we make a decision, have our record of decision, and in the next slide I'll go through that. Once we have a record of decision and then we get an agreement with Gelman to implement that remedy, I think these things will kind of dovetail together the way we kind of conceptually see it. And again, this is early on, we're trying to gather everything we can, but we see them kind of fitting together once EPA has that, makes that, that record of decision or has that enforcement action. So that's how I think it will move forward from there. Now, real quick to kind of go through our Superfund process, and at the top is the remedial process, and I'm going to touch on that, and then below that is the removal process, and I'm going to have Mellisa just touch briefly on that as well. So at the top, this bar across the top is what we have in Superfund. This remedial process is a long process where we're investigating contamination, making a decision, designing it and moving forward. So it is a long, thorough process that is there. And I just want to walk you through a few of the steps and where we are. The first step is the assessment process, which we're actually done, but it's when you find there's contamination at a site, what do? We get out, we usually do some type of inspection, we collect data, we evaluate it. If we're in a situation where there's a high level of contamination, it may make the national priorities list. And then we go through that process, as you know, of listing it, and that's where we're at, right? So it is this site, the Gelman site is on the national priorities list. We have listed it. So now we're at the next phase, which is the characterization phase. And this is when we do two primary things. The first thing is we conduct what's called the remedial investigation, or you'll hear the term RI, but really it's a remedial investigation. And what we're doing is we're looking and investigating the nature and extent of the contamination. Now the good thing about Gelman, good and bad, is it's been around for a while. There's been a lot of data that's been collected, but that doesn't mean we're going to take it all for granted and accept everything that Gelman said or anything that's been done. That's not the case. We're going to go through and we're going to look at all the existing on-site sources to make sure, are there any sources on site that may be contributing to the 1,4-dioxane plume that maybe haven't been investigated or need further investigation, or if there's been an alternative or a remedy selected for it, is it effective? We're going to look at all of that in that remedial investigation, as well as all the groundwater, right? We're going to go back and re-look at all the groundwater. We know there's a groundwater plume to the west that's there. We know there's a groundwater plume to the east moving towards the Huron River and the issues you have with that. We understand the data that's out there for a potential extended plume to the north that's moving outside of the prohibition zone, so we're going to evaluate that data as well. So all of that kind of falls under our umbrella of the remedial investigation to kind of figure out the nature and extent of contamination and what's there. And then the next step after that is we put together what's called, or Gelman will put together what is called a feasibility study, where we evaluate the alternatives. So we know the contamination, we have a really good handle on it. Now we evaluate the alternatives and figure out what can we do. Is it a pump and treat remedy? Is there some other remedy that's out there beyond what's been done? We're going to evaluate that. And we evaluate against like 9 criteria. Is the remedy protective? Does it comply with the requirements, the regulations? It has to do that. Is it implementable in both the short term, the long term? Is it cost effective? Is it, are you going to treat the material or not? And then state community acceptance is also extremely important throughout this process. So once we kind of select a remedy, we then have what's called a proposed plan, where EPA comes forward and we say, based on our investigation, our remedial investigation, and doing the feasibility study, we now say, here's our proposed plan. Here's what we think the remedy is, and we have this document that presents that. We have a formal public comment period that comes out. We take comments in on that, evaluate that from both the state and community acceptance, and then we issue this record of decision, or the ROD. You hear that term thrown out a lot. Like, so the record of decision is kind of the formal agency action over what's the remedy going to be. And all of this does take time to get to that point. So once we get the record decision, the next step is, okay, we're gonna go forward and we're gonna implement that remedy, and usually there's a design phase. And even if it's a pump and treat system, there's some design parameters or data you may collect, and then usually there's like a 30% design, and then a 95% design that kind of goes through there that we all get to evaluate. And again, we're gonna be working with the state doing that, and then they implement the remedy. That's kind of our process with that. Now, I want you to notice at that top thing, it says community involvement and planning, that bar goes across the entire process. And Diane is going to talk about community involvement a little bit when we're done with the slide, but I just want to make it clear that, that goes on throughout this entire process, that we will have a lot of engagement, and Diane will speak to that in a little bit, but, we fully intend on having many future community meetings and different types of meetings and different types of activities, so we're not going to go away, go in the dark, go back to Chicago. I'm going to go back to Chicago. We're not going to do that. And we're going to keep everybody involved on what's going on. And you're going to know what's happening out here. I mean, that's really a key thing. It's really important. So the other process, kind of the shorter term process, the more immediate process, is what we call our removal process. So I'm going to turn this over to Mellisa to kind of cover that.
Thanks, Jim. Yeah, so like Jim said, he works in the remedial program in Superfund, and I work in the removal program in Superfund. And while sometimes we work in tandem, what my program does is two primary actions. We do emergency responses, so those are things that need to happen right now, like you have an oil spill or a train derailment, things like that. The other part of my job is to perform what are called time-critical removal actions. And those are expedited, short-term responses under CERCLA to a hazardous substance release or a threat of a release. And EPA determines that the response action needs to happen in less than 6 months. So that's the difference between a time-critical removal action and then your standard remedial investigation process. So we perform what's called a removal site evaluation to determine if, to collect data, to determine if a time-critical removal action, or sometimes you'll hear it referred to as a TCRA, is appropriate for a site. And those can be performed by potentially responsible parties under oversight of EPA, or in other cases where there is no PRP or the PRP is unwilling, EPA can perform this. So that is a brief overview of our removal process.
Thank you, Mellisa. Appreciate that. Okay, so what's next? That's what everybody wants to know, right? What are our next steps that we're going to do? And I guess I just want to start, like, we're EPA, we're going to continue our enforcement process, but I just want to make it clear that our Superfund program is a polluter pay program. And so we have every intention of using our enforcement authority to make sure government conducts this work and gets this site cleaned up. So just so we're clear on that, that's our thought process moving forward with this. And as I said, we just initiated that process and we're going to move forward with that, and that is moving forward. Regarding community involvement, I am going to turn over to Diane, because I said we're going to bring her up because she is, great at this job. I can speak from working with her for years on the Kalamazoo site, working with her. She has a real knack for this. And what are we going to do here?
Thanks, Jim. Well, this is the start, right? Meeting a lot of you today. I've actually spoken to several of you already. It's a great time to put faces to names. And so really what's going forward, on that slide, it had community involvement throughout. And my job is, this is not cookie cutter. It's not one size fits all. Every community is different. And you all know what that looks like for your community. And so I'm going to be needing to partner with all of you to figure out what does that look like for our engagement in this place. So initially we're going to be starting off with things like what we call community interviews. So I'll be sitting down one-on-one or maybe in a group setting where I'll be gaining that knowledge from you about where you get your information, what kind of formats are you looking to do. And that's going to inform what we call a community involvement plan. So for this site, we're going to be building out our engagement strategy in a document called a Community Involvement Plan. And those community interviews will be critical to informing what that looks like for this site, for EPA and the community going forward. So that's really what, short term, we're going to be expecting in the next few weeks as far as my work. While the site team is doing the technical stuff, I'll be coming in and starting to partner with all of you to figure out the next steps for the community. Okay? That's it. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you, Dan. As far as the investigation work and where we go from here, so our site investigation, that remedial investigation, I hate having all the acronyms on the thing, but I just want to, unfortunately, we have all those in our federal world. But we're going to start collecting information, all the various groundwater data that's collected. One of the first steps for government will have them kind of produce this summary of all the information that they've collected, where are all the wells, trying to get a feel for groundwater flow, looking at more information regarding that, trying to get a collection of all the work they've done and all the sources. That's kind of the first step, and we're gathering that to get a better understanding. And it's not like we haven't looked at any of this. I want to be clear, we have been working on this for several months and looking into all of that. So we do have a jump on that early on. When it comes to early actions, we haven't made a decision yet whether we're going to pursue a time critical or not. We're all evaluating all the information based on that. But Mellisa is here, and so we have her here for that if we need for the help from that. And throughout the entire life of this project, again, that we are going to work with EGLE as our partner. We're going to use them for technical assistance. We're going to have them, they have a much better handle over where everything is located, what obstacles there may be in implementing some of this work. And so we're going to work to, have them help out with that. So with that is kind of our short summary of activities and where we are. And I think that we certainly would like to, get some feedback from all of you. We're here to kind of listen and learn so we can help better plan our next steps to not only conduct the work, but also really, as Diane said, to engage in you in a way that you feel it's really effective.
All right, well, thank you. And the other handout that you have is kind of our, just up the website, what a Superfund process looks like, community's guide. So that's that. I want to thank the team. I want to tell a story on Mellisa. The day or so, the week after the listing went through, I saw her at a training session, and she came running over to me and saying, I'm so excited about this, getting started on this site. So I want you to know that this is personal to us and the team too, and that we're passionate about it. We feel your passion for it. Protecting groundwater, protecting drinking water is the most important thing we do at the EPA. And so I want you to know that about this team. What questions can we answer really about process, community engagement, commitment to transparency, and listening and learning from you all? Yeah, we can pass the mic. That might be the best.
Yeah, we have another one.
Oh,
Go ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ann. My name is Jason Morgan, and I am a state rep today, but served as chair of the Washtenaw County Board of Commissioners back when we were first getting everybody together in partnership with Congresswoman Dingell. And I just want to say first, thank you. I mean, you've heard it a lot, but you should also hear that Debbie says very nice things about you when you're not in the room too. So thank you for the work that you're doing. This truly was a huge undertaking for all of us together to get on the same page after trying every possible option to make sure that this was the right one for our community. And there was a lot of faith and trust on Congresswoman Dingell, her passion and push to help bring folks to the table, but also on the EPA and whether this truly would move forward. And so thank you so much for making that happen and taking this seriously and understanding the facts of this site to truly demonstrate that we did need this designation and this support here in our community. I think certainly you'll hear a lot from a lot of folks who have been deep in the data and the details, and they're smart and passionate about that work, certainly the folks from CARD here, but I know that we are ready and willing to move heaven and earth on this site as a community. Where can we be the most helpful in that push Do you need any further actions from our locals officially, or is it just showing up and being engaged? Is it the data and the informing what's going on site? Where can we be the most helpful and supportive in this work moving forward?
Well, thank you. I have, as the universe would have it, I've known Mrs. Dingell a long time. And she had my cell phone number, so that worked out nicely. And she has really, truly been the most passionate advocate for you all. The Superfund process, by design, is deliberative, is slow, and it will feel slow. And so, I guess two things. As Diane said and Jim laid out, we will be here, engaged in data collection and in interviews, and a lot of that is making sure that we already know, or that we learn what you all know already about your site and the site here, and making sure that we know everything EGLE knows, for that matter, making sure that we're not reinventing the wheel and starting from ground zero. That is not what happens. So yes to continuing to engage in data sharing, but I guess I would also take this opportunity to ask for some patience and some just, if you don't hear from us for a month, we are working. We are doing lots of things. And if you don't hear from us for 2 months, call me and ask me. I mean, that won't happen, but I answer my phone all the time. These guys will tell you. I am not offended by, hey, we just haven't heard an update in a while. Call Diane. We'll be here. And so I guess, yeah, a little bit of patience, maybe a little bit of appreciation that there are alternatives. That is the point of an alternatives analysis, and we might not all agree on the alternatives, but we're going to do our best to find the right solution that's the most timely and the most appropriate solution. Somebody said this is not cookie cutter, right? There is not a one-size-fits-all solution to this problem. And so we will engage with you all on what those alternatives are and find the right path forward in the community.
Thank you, Georgia. My name is James Demore, and 10 years ago, I'm trying not to do too much of a resume for myself, but 10 years ago, I was vice chair of the Saric Run Valley Group, and we, along with Ann Arbor Township and South Township, petitioned US EPA for Superfund status. I'm now chair of the political committee for the Michigan chapter, so 10 years, a lot has happened. My question for you is in terms of enforcement and who's going to pay for this in terms of who's going to pay. And first off, thank you, is what Jason said, to you, Congresswoman Dingell, and I know a group effort for all that you've done. But in terms of polluter pay, what will be the enforcement mechanisms for payment in terms of finding a responsible party? Can you explain a little bit more of how that works?
Probably the first conversation we had, and then I know you had this conversation with Administrator Zeldin as well, is that is the benefit, I mean, that is the point of the CERCLA, right, of the CERCLA authorization. The additional federal authority that the US EPA has that the state does not, is that polluter pays model for Superfund sites, for national priority list sites. So the process is not cookie cutter. I'm going to keep saying that. It depends is the answer. As Jim laid out, we've started that process of information collection and figuring out the corporate structure of Gelman, which is not as easy as it should be. I didn't say that out loud. And so we're starting down that path to figure out what an order would look like. And so I don't have that information for you today to know if it's going to be unilateral, if it's going to be agreed. I don't know. We have a lot of tools in the toolbox. The CERCLA authority is robust, and so a lot of options, but we don't know. Jim is nodding, so I
That is
think I'm in the same spot. It's something that we will happily stay in touch. As Phil importantly mentioned, the state orders stay in place until a federal order is entered, whether that's unilateral or otherwise. And so that will be a significant milestone when a federal order takes the place of a state order.
And to follow up quickly, US DOJ would be following up on the federal level if necessary.
Of course.
I just want to, one of the things that I think everybody needs to expect, it is one of the arguments that I made, because Michigan, Jeff Irwin and others here have been trying to get polluter pay forever, and we don't have that authority in Michigan. And the federal government does. So that is one of the reasons why this was so important. But everybody needs to understand that they have, from the very moment that this dioxin plume was found, tried to tie this up in the courts, to pit you all against each other. They overloaded the doc when it was listed in the national priority list and comments were asked for. They overloaded it, which is why the previous administration said there were too many. They couldn't get to it. I'll refrain from my political comment on that. But remember, Lee Zeldin did this. But we need to expect that they're going to challenge this in the courts. They're going to try to tie this up everywhere they can. Remember how they pitted you all against each other. I mean, that was one of the most, you had people, you can say that you petitioned to have EPA put this, but you have to have a governor agree to it before it can even be put, that it would be put on the national priority list, and governors didn't, because all 4 communities weren't together, quite frankly, until we got everybody together in the same room talking this through. They are going to try to do everything they can to pit people against each other, slow this down, go to the courts. EPA is not saying this, I am, and we all have to be united and pushing back and be in a community. United.
Hi, thanks for being here tonight. Appreciate it. My name's Vince Caruso, Allen's Creek Watershed Group, the Heart Group, 1/4 dioxin. You know, things happen to us, you know, and something that recently happened is I think we determined that vapor intrusion could be a major problem for Ann Arbor and maybe township areas as well, in that the contamination could migrate through neighborhoods and percolate up into the basement and then evaporate and expose the homeowners to 1/4 dioxin. Rita, my wife, was an emeritus toxicologist and hospitality chemist with a PhD, published an article in Elsevier, which is a very significant journal, and they accepted the article and it's been published, and it's out there, you know, as an issue that we may have to deal with, and this is just what we're dealing with. We're going to have more of this happening, things happening that we don't realize. This is, you know, nobody thought about 1/4 dioxin vaporized, you know, into the basement, and people get exposed to it. And Bob Bailey did some calculations and found that about 150 part per billion in your basement is probably carcinogenic over a period of time. So it's something that you can't just, you know, hope it doesn't happen, but we're going to have to deal with that. And I think that's unfortunately what we're going to have to do, is constantly coming up with solutions to some of these problems. And I know people don't want this in their basement. They don't want their kids exposed. And I think it's irrelevant. I mean, it's a recent publication, so it's kind of new in the field, but I think it's because it was accepted and published. I think it has a lot of support behind it from scientific avenues. So that's just one thing we're going to have to deal with. And I guess the comment was that we think that Gelman's going to have enough money to deal with this contamination, because over the years it's been debated whether there's going to be enough money to clean this up, since it's pretty extensive. Do you have an idea on that? Is that going to be a problem, or are we going to run out of money, so to speak? I know Doniger has the Trojan system, which is basically 1,4-dioxin decontamination. So, they actually do this as a living. So, I'm just curious, if there's going to be any problems, getting enough money to clean this up.
So thank you for that. And to your first point, that I think that's the kind of fact-finding is exactly what the remedial investigation was for. That is exactly what we're here to do, figure out where it is and do that literature review, and so I appreciate that very much. As to whether they can pay for it, that is something we've also asked. I mean, that is kind of step one, is to tell us who you are and where your bank accounts live. So we don't know, as far as I know, EGLE doesn't have that kind of.
What the federal government has is the authority to dig in, to find out. So we didn't have it. You're ahead of where we were, and we're going to try to hold them accountable, and that's why it's great that the EPA actually did this. But if you go in negative and think, oh, they're not going to, then you're not going to do it. You go in positive and say, we're going to hold those people accountable for what they did. Get people positive.
Hi, I'm Rita LaCarusa. That's my husband. Anyway, my questions are to Diane and Mellisa, actually, if that's appropriate. I'm really curious about the interview process that was mentioned as something that's going to start next week. And I guess I'm a detailed person. I'm wondering, what is the process? For example, how are the people who are going to be interviewed going to be selected? Will the interviews be in person, on Zoom, by paper? Any kind of details like that. And I have a second question for Mellisa, who works in Ann Arbor. I don't know if you live in Ann Arbor, but it seems like you did say you have sort of a personal interest in this, and again, some specific thoughts on examples of things that might be considered time critical, being familiar with the site and Ann Arbor. Thank you. Is that fair to ask two questions?
Seems fair to me. So thank you for asking about the process. And let me just correct, this does not start next week. I got some groundwork to do first. I'm just going to show, this is something that we've done in Kalamazoo, where I put out some information. This is a flyer that shows people could call and contact for one-on-one meetings, but I've also done workshops. So this is an example of something I've done there. Getting information also in the form of an online survey, so that's another way to do it. That's the plan I need to build. So I need to figure out, what time frames will work, what type of format would work. Again, that's just an example of what I did in Kalamazoo, right? And it's really going to be driven by, I'm probably going to be asking the people in this room what how that should be designed. It's a big community, so I know, like for the Wolverine site, for example, several municipalities were involved, and I did a series of interviews. So I would put out a postcard. If people were interested, they could reserve a time, sit with me at the local library. We could learn things like, I need to know where you all get your information from. What's your information sources, so that if we have to put information out about the site, where does that go? Meeting spots, if we want to have a public meeting, where should that be held? What kind of expectations you have about communications with EPA. So I'm going to be learning all of those things from that interview process, so that I can take what I've learned and I can let our team know, hey, as we move along in this process, this is what the expectations are, this is the knowledge base, this is what, some of you have already been sharing your knowledge with site team members already, but I can also take that time, and that if you know something, you can share it with me during that time, and I can share it with the site team as well. There's also a format where I can even have with me at that meeting a technical person together to take that in real time. So Does that help kind of clarify like what, I'm assuming you're just going to keep that paper? That's fine. That's fine.
I mean, I can return it too, but.
It's just an example like what I did for Kalamazoo. Again, just reiterating that may not be what it looks like here.
Sure.
Just not as an example.
That's
Okay.
very helpful, thank you.
Yes, of course.
Okay, so yeah, I do work in Ann Arbor. I actually live in Stockbridge, which is about 45 minutes away. But I've worked in Ann Arbor on and off for about 6 years. And the other thing is, I went to Wayne State University for both my undergrad and my master's degree, and studied under Larry Lemke. So I have heard about this site for as long as my education goes back. So I've always had a really strong interest in learning more about it. So as far as the removal process goes, the National Contingency Plan outlines various things very specifically that would or could trigger a removal action, either an emergency response or a time-critical removal action. They're called the 8 factors. Some of them include things like soil contamination at or near the surface, actual exposures to human and environmental receptors, threat of fire or explosion. So there's a lot of different, there's 8 very specific things that we evaluate, and then we kind of score those things against different, I don't want to say criteria because they're not promulgated criteria like what Michigan has, but we have something called removal management levels for various contaminants, policy and guidance that's been written by EPA, and then also we'll look at things that are RCRA characteristic hazardous wastes. And that's kind of built into what our authority is to respond. So something has to check several boxes in order for a removal action to be warranted at a site. So it's something that we'll evaluate as part of this process, but we don't know right now if one will be taken. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I'm just curious, I didn't quite hear the very first in the beginning, you said 8 factor? Or
Oh, 8.
8.
Yep, so there's 8 factors that we use
got
to
it.
determine
Thank you.
if a time-critical removal action is necessary. So you can look up NCP removal program 8 factors in Google and all 8 will pop up. Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Maybe one more question? Okay, 2. Representative in the middle. Oh, I'm sorry.
Thanks. I just wondered in terms of, it feels like if there's a lot of us in this room to be calling you for updates all the time. I'm wondering if there's like anything that could be done that would just be, do you ever have like a website or something where we could just look and see, oh, that's what's happening now as legislators or people, I don't even know if the community would want that, but just rather than all of us calling you for updates.
Is there already a website?
Yeah, there's already a website.
There's already a website, yes.
Great, yeah, perfect.
Yes. I want to say that Ann has been incredible. I say to Phil some days, Phil, do I have the worst congressional district in the state for problems? And I do. Because we got all the downrivers and I want to tell you this, that so we've been, like, I have a lot of Superfund sites downriver and more that are being looked at and that are very politically. We do a quarterly meeting with EPA. It may end up being 3 times a year. And I gotta say, like at the beginning, when, like it was 2 weeks after the inaugural, and I said, Phil loves these meetings, they're his favorite thing. But I thought, but they're good. They are good. People come and it's, it's a community that cares deeply in a different way than, well, that's not a fair thing to say either, but they have very strong feelings about downriver too. But EPA, I thought for sure, because it was 2 weeks after with the new administration, a lot of things were happening, and Ann said, no, we're gonna keep doing that. And I think we should we'll figure out the right way to do it but we'll do periodic public meetings to update and talk about not just this, but there are also some other issues, and, you know, we got PFAS now in my, this is a great district. I love it, and we got people that work together to clean it up, and the community cares. So, that's, we'll work that way too.
Yeah, I should have said that earlier. There's a pretty robust website actually for every MPL site. Good choice.
So thank you very much, and to the three of you, of course, and to the staff that you represent, just like to echo the buckets of gratitude for the work that you've done, and crucially for the work that's upcoming. We are grateful for it and rely upon it. First, I had two questions, but Rep. Conlon sort of hit the first. You know, there's a lot of backstage conversations, it seems, crucially with EPA and the polluter. If there was a drop box that, you know, that was on the site where these are public or they're suitable for public distribution, if we could just see those as they show up, then we don't have to bug you about it. We know what you all are up to in this context, and that would be incredibly helpful. Then, you know, another thing that the public tends to key on often, of course, is drinking water and the drinking water standard. And the state drinking water standard is, of course, as you know, 7.2. And I guess, you know, one of the aspects of EPA work is its independence with respect to that number, or so is my assumption. In any event, my question, do we yet have a notion as to what standard the site will be held to from EPA's perspective?
Yeah, I guess the short answer is we're still evaluating. We haven't selected a cleanup number. We're going to look at the state number and all that's there. I mean, obviously it's a promulgated standard from the state of Michigan, so it certainly has relevance, you know, and fits into one of the criteria we evaluate. But that is kind of like, we are really early on in the process to think about what the cleanup standard is. I think we're trying to figure out where are all the wells that are being monitored? What is this network, and kind of let's track the plume and get a better feel for that first.
Spoiler alert, your community engagement will say that a lower standard.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
If you don't mind. Just a couple questions then. So I'm looking way into the future here based on your remedial process. And it says cleanup, of course, and then post-construction, operation and maintenance, and NPL deletion. Is that possible for our community, or will this always be on the list?
Yeah, I wouldn't even hazard a guess. It is, I mean, sites get deleted. Sites actually do get cleaned up and deleted.
Yeah,
in the country.
And with the dioxane and where it is in our area, is it possible that it can ever be 100% cleaned up, or is it?
New technology develops every day.
Thank you. One other question. With the administration that we have right now, is it possible, well, we're on the list, but would it be possible with layoffs, or once we're on the list, and then when we have a different administration, maybe there's more staff, how does that work? Would it just slow down? It wouldn't take us off the list.
If anybody was going to take, I'm going to say this politically.
Okay.
If anybody was going to take you off the list, you wouldn't have been listed by this administration. And do you know how many people in this room looked at me and said, if we get a Donald Trump administration, this will never happen, we'll be screwed. It is a Donald Trump administration that listed this as a Superfund site. I want that noted. And the administration, they're working very hard. You know this. You all have been working on this, some of you for decades. And I've said to the administrator, just look at the facts. Please just look at the facts. It's spreading, it's moving, and the federal government has authority that the state doesn't. And all he did was look at the facts. So I know everybody is discouraged and it feels like it's been forever and you don't trust anything, but it did get listed. For 10 years, I heard half this room tell me it would never happen. Stop working together. You are pitted against each other. Let's work together and get this cleaned up as well as we can and protect the drinking water of Washtenaw County and where else it was spreading.
Thank you.
And I'm not speaking for EPA, but I will just say what I observed and the discussions we had where we were trying to provide information that would help with the decision is, this was done with a lot of care. A lengthy process, took longer than any of us maybe wanted. And what I heard you and others say multiple times, we don't want to do this unless we feel like it's something we can follow through and do our job on it. Would you agree with that?
I do agree. I'll answer your direct question. Superfund division is staffed and funded, and sites do not fall off the list. That's the answer. Last question.
So I'm Roger Rayle. About 30 years ago, August, I went to a meeting when it was the DNR, and they had a citizen advisory committee. And sat through that meeting and learned what was going on and saw what the data looked like. The data was a stack of paper this thick. It was a printout. It was in columns. So, where's the electronic copy of this? Clearly it's not a computer someplace. Well, it took a couple of years. I finally got working with Ken Davis, who was president of Gelman at the time, and Chuck gave him the cleanup for about a year and a half. And we got the first database. And then the DNR at the time said, well, we'd like a copy of that too. So that happened. The other thing we did out of that meeting, and I still have the little notepad that I stayed up all night making notes of the meeting. We became, some of us, how do you influence a private company? Become a stockholder. So some of us became stockholders in government, and we went to their annual meeting, which was still in Ann Arbor at the time, and we asked questions. We were allowed one question each, and the result of that question and my challenging one of Chuck Gelman's answers to one of the questions, which he admonished me, you've had your one question, so you need to sit down or have the sergeant of arms physically remove you. But you don't say that somebody who's looking for facts. And all the lawyers and the bankers look at each other like, what was this all about? Anyway, out of that, the following few months later, I got a call at work. And at the time, our offices were over the Western Plume, Parkland Plaza. And the call was, well, this is Kim Davis, and we need to talk. Kim Davis, again, was President and Chief Operating Officer of Gelman at the time. And we said, this is starting to affect my business. And this business at the time was brought in to make Gelman a more professionally run company, instead of one run by the seat of the pants by an entrepreneur that had outgrown his usefulness, basically. And with that relationship, I said, okay, we can meet, but it can't just be me. It has to say the same stakeholders who were in this citizen involvement group that the DNR set up. That was something that existed before EGLE administration, when they did away with all those citizen advisory groups and loosened the standards by a factor of 25 and did away with the political payroll and all that. But we still had that core group of people from the local governments and citizen groups. And out of that, a couple years later, we decided to form the SAR Residents for Safe Water, a 501c3 nonprofit, to keep the community informed on this. Because we needed at the time to send out postage. We needed money for postage. That's how low budget we were. To keep the community informed, because we didn't have everybody had the internet at the time. Out of that, there was some other, that ended up growing into the Coalition for Action on Remediation of Dioxin, which the city had formed an earlier group, intergovernmental partnership to respond to ideas, but they were never getting the head of the problem. So Coalition for Action was set up in 2006. So 95 for SRSW, 2006 for CARD, and then in 2016, CARD was more formalized with officers. And everybody who's a member of the CARD administration, please raise your hand. Okay, so we've got a good representation here. Now, everybody who has been to a CARD meeting in person or on Zoom raise your hand. Raise your hand, yeah. This guy here, if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't be here. In 1984, as a graduate student, sampling in the Third Sister Lake, he discovered dioxin running off from the government property.
Hey, you can blame me.
And it took him a year, and the local authorities and the state didn't really want to believe him. But he stuck with it for a year and a half. And when they sampled, oh yeah, they found lots of course, when they started sampling all the homeowner and business wells around the area, they found hundreds and thousands of parts per billion of dioxin in the water, in the groundwater. And the other thing, he wouldn't have been there if it wasn't for the University of Michigan Regent, Arthur Hill, back in the early 1900s, giving that land, that part of the land, the Saginaw Forest, to the university for a demonstration of sustainable forestry for his beloved forestry department, which became School of Natural Resources, yada, yada, yada. And so there's a lot of people who are in the right place at the right time doing the right thing. I thought I would be involved for a year or two. 33 years later, I'm still advocating for the best thing. And to get you, everybody up to speed at the EPA, we have gigabytes of data that we need to review with you, some of which you will not get from the state or the company. So I think it's important that we work, we'll do what we can to bring you up to speed, hit the ground running. And that's really what I wanted to say. Thank you for, especially Debbie, for getting this organized, and everybody for being here, and everybody, all the people in this room have a role to play in this. And, you know, because, as I say to people, we're about 2/3 water. Act accordingly.
Okay, so we've only just begun. And we're all still happy about Vogel. I want to thank everybody for coming. It is just the beginning. I really do, again, want to thank the EPA and the EGLE. You know, I was asking Ann questions because I've got other projects, and EPA, I know how they work with the community. They really want to do that. They want to make sure they're reaching out. If you're feeling frustrated, call me. You know I respond to all of your calls. But I really have to tell you, Ann's the one that said to me, let's do a meeting as quickly as we can with all the stakeholders. And she's here. And that's why we're here today. They're going to start the work. It's been how many decades? So it's not going to be overnight. But we've gotten where all of you wanted to go to start to get a plan to hold the polluter accountable and clean this up to the very best we can. So thank you everybody for caring, to all those who've been active in this for 5 decades. It's hard to believe, but it has been. And I'm grateful to Ann and her team and the head of Superfund who, it really means a lot that these people came in today, because they do care. And I want to thank them. We're all going to stay in touch. We'll have regular meetings, and I'm grateful for all the work that everybody does in this room. Thank you, Ann. Thank you, Peter. Thank you.